And we're live with Altered Moments. Welcome to everyone who's joining us. And sorry that we're a couple minutes late. I actually turned off my browser a few minutes before we were supposed to start. Took a little time to log back in. You could say it was an altered moment. What is an altered moment? An altered moment is simply a moment when God shows up and changes our lives, and we're never the same. And I'm Kimberly Stevens. I'm your host, and I believe that God is alive and well, working in and changing our lives every day. And all we need are eyes to see and ears to hear that He is here and He will reveal Himself. And today I'm really excited to bring on my very, very good friend. Her name is Laura Wellman. She's coming to us today from Cleveland, Ohio. Let's bring her to the stage. Laura, hi, welcome.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you to everyone who is joining us live and on the replay at a later date. Laura and I actually work for the same company, and we do the same thing. And I met Laura when I first started in this business. And oh my gosh, do you remember that Christmas conference or that conference?
I still have that on my as my photo on my contact. That's a photo on my contact of you.
And that was just we bonded immediately. And it was a thank you to our later moms. And it was just such a great time of the two of us as young sales agents, brokers, learning about the business we had just joined, learning about what could happen if we had success. And I think we were both walking around a little starstruck at what was possible for our futures.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and here we are many years later, and both of us have become very successful with Healthcare Solutions team. And we coined a phrase back in that day, and we were both coming off of bad relationships with men. Laura was going through some really particularly hard times with her children and ex-husband, and I think she's going to tell a little bit about that today. But we coined the phrase hot mamas, and it was a phrase that we lovingly say to each other to encourage each other that we are beautiful, inside and out, no matter what is going on around us. And I love that.
I love it too.
This is my hot mama friend. My very, very dear friend. So Laura has some things in her background that she has created. And I want you to tell us a little bit about your family and Cleveland, Ohio. I know you're coming to us from there. You'll probably share a little bit more about that later. But something that our viewers probably don't know from just looking is that beautiful artwork in the background was created and designed by you.
That is true.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I've always been an artist. I have not always called myself that. That kind of happened more recently, where I finally felt comfortable in giving myself that identity. But I've always been an artist, and it is just a piece of who I am, and I make artwork for myself. And fortunately, other people have liked it too, and I have been able to sell artwork as well. So that's been kind of exciting and weird at the same time. I'm just floored that I can sit in my house and use artwork as therapy, and then someone comes along and they like it. It's so dumbfounding to me, because for me it's just a way to express myself or work through emotions that I'm going through, is to express myself through artwork. So this particular artwork behind me, not this large piece, but all the other pieces that are around here and I'm blocking.
Oh
Sorry.
my gosh. Yeah.
These are all made from melted crayons. Um, and I accidentally just stumbled upon this technique. So about 12 years ago, when I was first starting to go through a divorce, I had homeschooled my kids, and in the schoolroom in our house, I had an art cabinet. It was free range art at my house. We always did artwork. And over the years, I accumulated this giant bucket of broken crayons. I can't throw anything away. I don't know why I was holding on this bucket of crayons, but I was like, this bucket of crayons is like my nemesis. What am I going to do with this stupid bucket of crayons, right? I lose everything on the planet, but I have this bucket of crayons. And it was during, still that Y2K thing was hanging over our heads. People are still talking about prepping and this sort of thing. And somewhere on the internet, I saw that you could light a crayon on fire and it will burn for 3 hours. What if the power goes out? And
Oh my gosh.
so I was like, that can't be
Who
right.
knew?
So I did it, and it's true. You can light a crayon on fire. And so I have always played with melted crayons. I grew up with a crock pot full of melted wax, and I would dip my hands in it and make candles and all kinds of stuff. So I love the smell, the feel, everything of melted wax. I started playing with these crayons. So I started gluing them to boards that I pulled out of the trash and melting them you can melt them with a hairdryer. And so I started making artwork, and I started making so much artwork. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. So what I would do, I would stay up all night long, and I would make artwork out of melted crayons. Everything I own at this point has melted crayons on it. I have ruined so many clothes. It's on my kitchen floors, on my cabinets. It's on sweaters. And I started making so much artwork. I have stacks and stacks and stacks of artwork. And a good friend of mine said, there's a local artist guild. Why don't you join? And I'm like, that's ridiculous. I pulled boards out of the trash and I melt crayons on them. This is not artwork, right? This is just me being a crazy person in the middle of the night. And she's like, no. And so I applied. They accepted me. In my very first show, I sold out. Within the first 15 minutes, I sold all the pieces. And I was like,
it's amazing.
This artwork. And so I've been doing it ever since. So it's about 10 years now that I've been making the artwork out of melted crayons. This one behind me, just a couple years ago, everything's the opposite, so I'm going the wrong way. That's acrylic. So I taught myself acrylic paints, and I've been playing around with that. Yeah. So that one's acrylic, and I really enjoy that medium, although I'm still getting familiar with the techniques and stuff with that.
Very cool. Do you have one that's small with the melted crayons that you can hold up a little closer?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to hold up this one, even though it needs to be cleaned and it is in disrepair. But so these are actually marbles on here. You can see 3 dimensional. But so this is kind of a technique that I use multimedia. So I'll take objects and I'll glue them. And all these white spots here, these are where crayons are supposed to be. And that's on the floor back here is a pile of marbles that have fallen off. But I just love this piece. It was hanging in my own kitchen for a long time. And since I moved recently, I dug it out of the basement, and the marbles need to be glued back on. But I love this piece.
So. It is beautiful. My daughter just put a comment on, Tori, thank you for being here. And she said she tried crayon art off of Pinterest.
Oh,
crayons ended up everywhere. She said she used a wall dryer and not a hand dryer.
Yeah, so you can use heat guns, but they're much hotter, and you can actually scorch the crayons with them. So hair dryers, I blow up hair dryers doing the artwork. And I also ruin, the glue guns. I'll put crayons in the glue guns. That's another technique. I'll show you this one. So this one is made by putting crayons.
Oh my gosh.
In a glue gun and melting it through there. So sometimes you get, lines like this, but you get drops and drops.
Wow.
So this piece is actually because I buy a lot of crayons, and I sort them by color, and I had this like 5-pound bag of brown crayons, and I'm like, what am I ever going to do with brown crayons? And piece was created because I had a million brown crayons.
Wow, it's so beautiful.
So this one actually hangs in my dining room to this day, and it's like 4 feet long.
Wow. Beautiful.
And these are all tree. Most of these other pieces are trees, which I did an entire tree series for about 3 years. All I did was trees. I've always made trees my whole life in everything that I've done, so it's just kind of something that felt like home when I started doing it. But I do a lot of abstract type stuff too. So yeah, just whatever I feel like.
It's amazing. So I actually have a feeling that your altered moment has a lot to do with the insomnia that birthed your beautiful art. And tell us a little bit about the context of what was going on in your life and leading up to this altered moment, and then tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I was married for 20 years, and unfortunately it was progressively abusive relationship, and to the point where I had been whittled down to literally nothing. And so I finally left there. That was in Illinois, and I homeschooled my kids at the time. And so the agreement was that I was just going to go to my parents for a little while because we were trying to calm things down and maybe work things out. And so I left with the kids, and because I homeschooled, everything just came with us. And long story short, because it is a very long story, it went on for 6 years, the divorce did. So
Wow.
During the course of that, my kids had to go back to Illinois. And these were kids that were home birth, breastfed, homeschooled. I had never been away from them. And for some reason, the judge thought it was a good idea for my kids to be separated from me. And I felt like I was going to die. And that's where the artwork started happening, because I could not process what had happened. It was so devastating to me. So I moved back to Illinois, which is someplace I never, ever wanted to step foot back into. And I found myself back in the town where my children had been born. And I literally hated my life. I did not want to be there, minus the fact that my kids were there. I was also homeless for a year. My kids were like 2 miles away, and I was not allowed to see them. And so the amount of angst and trauma that caused in my life was something that has taken me all this time to just get my head above water.
Absolutely. How old are your kids now?
My youngest turned 18 last year. So that's what I was waiting for. All my children were very upset that they had to go back. My whole family's here in Cleveland area. And when we were here for a little over a year, we loved it here so much. I can't even tell you how much we loved it here. And so when they had to go back and when I went back, we were all very, very, very upset to have to go back to Illinois. And I had to learn how to love where I live. And I definitely had words with God. And thank God that God is bigger than my anger. Because I really taunted God, and I said, why don't you just strike me down? Why don't you just, I thumbed my nose at God. I swore at God. I cursed God. And I literally screamed at him driving into the office in Lombard. I'd get in the office so early, they gave me a key to the building, and I would scream all the way there, and I'd be like, I'm showing up. You got to do the rest. Do it, God. I was like, do it, and
it's not an easy job starting out, especially.
It's very stressful.
Yes.
Very stressful building this type of job. So I screamed at God, but I also screamed at God that he promised me certain things. And, in the Bible, and he has so many promises. God promises this, and that if I give him all my burdens, that he will make my yoke light, right? And he will give me rest. And I'm like, where's the rest? And all this stuff. Well, God put opportunity in front of me, and He put the people in front of me. I can't even tell you how thankful I am for Carlos and Mons and other people in that office that I met. They didn't necessarily know everything I was going around, but those people saved my life again and again and again. Because I would get in there at 6:30 in the morning, I'd leave at 10:30 at night, and I didn't have any money. I was literally homeless. I didn't know where I was going to eat, and I would just be on the phone, and I would not eat all day, and then they would plop down a bag of food on my desk, and they didn't know it, but that saved my life.
Wow.
It was a McDonald's sandwich or something. I didn't care. They're like, "Do you have any dietary restrictions?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have any food." Uh, so I just try to play it cool because nobody, I learned really fast when people say, "Hey, how's it going?" They don't want to know how you're doing, okay? They want you to say, "Oh, I'm great. Everything's hunky dory."
So
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm interrupting you.
Oh,
But it's so true, right? Being honest,
yeah. People
and
don't
authentic.
want to hear that. It's too much. It's too much for them, which is understandable because it was a lot. It was too much for me too. So anyway, long story short, we were all looking forward to the day when we could all leave Illinois and come back here to Cleveland because we loved it so much. Well, my oldest graduated and he eventually moved out and got roommates and goes, to school and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And then my middle, he was a senior during COVID. So the schools were shut down and everything. I said, you know what? I was looking for an out for him because, my ex-husband wasn't going to offer him any opportunity or anything. And so I said, look, his name's Calvin, my middle son. I said, you're not going to school anyway, and this is ridiculous what they're doing. Why don't you go to Ohio? Why don't you go work for my brother's company for the summer for an apprenticeship? And then when you come back, you'll finish senior year. And if everything goes well, you'll have a job at the end.
Awesome.
And so he did that. He came here for 3 months and he knocked it out of the park. My brother had bought him like the first set of tools thinking it would last him that whole summer. Within like 2 weeks, he had to buy him the next set of tools. He just excelled. And to this day, he runs my brother's teams. It's a window and door company. So he runs his outside teams for him.
Very cool.
And he lives on his own, has his own house. He lives with his girlfriend, actually, just about half an hour from me. And then last summer, my youngest son turned 18 and graduated high school. And I bought a house in April and moved in May. And then I moved Memorial Day weekend and I drove back the next weekend to go to his graduation.
Amazing.
And so I got to come home on June 4th from his graduation to this house, which I bought. So in 8 years' time, I was able to be successful enough to save enough and buy a house and create my own independence. So that's where I am today, is here in this house. And I have to tell you something, I'm still not over it. The month of March, I made more money than I made my first year.
Wow, that's amazing.
And the first year of insurance, so that second year, I doubled my income.
Mm-hmm.
And this first quarter of this year, I made more money than I made my second year.
Amazing.
And I still can't believe it. I can't believe it. Every time I look at the numbers, I'm like, is that really true? Because when you go through homelessness and bankruptcy and foreclosure and you feel hungry and stressed to the point where I was losing weight. I joined a gym so that I would get hungry and I would sleep. And when you come out of that, the physical effects on your body are pretty devastating, to say the least.
Absolutely.
So I had lots of PTSD that I was really, really battling the last few years. It would just come out of the blue. It would just knock me to my knees. I would replay scenarios that had happened over that 6 or so years, that it was just court after court after court. And I had just such bad anxiety and so many like physical things going on with me, that everything was aimed towards me moving back. And so everything started on to narrow down for me into this singular focus. Like, as soon as Eli can turn 18, as soon as Eli can turn 18, as soon as Eli can turn 18. And I actually apologized to him because I'm like, I'm not trying to wish your life away, but I cannot wait for you to turn 18 because I need to get out of here so bad.
Wow.
And since I have,
So it was your promised land.
it was my promised land, and in a certain amount of way, I feel like I was the prodigal son too, because I'm the oldest child and I'm also the only child from my biological parents' marriage. I have stepdad, step siblings. And when I left at 18, I said later alligator, I never lived at home again. So it was a real homecoming for me to be able to come into my own home that I bought. No one bought it for me. No one helped me. No one did anything. I mean, they were there praying for me, but there's not much. My family's not independently wealthy. It's not like they could send me a check and fix everything. I had to do that on my own. So since I've been here, I cannot tell you the amount of gratitude that overwhelms me almost on a daily basis. I mean, I'm gonna start crying. I get so I just look around my house and I am so overwhelmed with gratitude that God brought me through that, and that He brought my children through that, and that I can do as well as I do. And I feel, with everything going on in the world, and everyone's, suffering from the inflation and everything. And I'm keeping pace with all that. And I haven't lost a job. I haven't had to struggle like I did in the beginning there. And I'm sorry, tears are just kind of like falling out of my eyes. So yeah, I just can't even tell you how much peace I'm experiencing, probably more than I ever have in my entire life. So I am so thankful. I start every prayer and every thought and every day with just thank you. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. And that is a real mindset changer for me. I've had some friends ask, or even people that hear about my story, how did you do it? And my initial reaction is like, I didn't do anything. I don't even know what you're talking about. I literally survived. I didn't do anything. If you're hungry, you do what you got to do to eat. And
exactly.
Mons had said to me when I first started this job, before I started the job, I met with him and he said, it's not rocket science, but you have to be hungry. And it was like a light bulb. And I was like, I can do that. I can do what you tell me because I'm hungry. And that's what made me show up. And I don't know if my former self would have done that. It's out of the struggle that I learned to be who I am. And that's, I think, part of what God needed to teach me too. Because I was a little angry about my upbringing and about my childhood and things that happened there. And I kind of harbored that a lot in my life, just a little bit of anger. And just a little bit of anger can really, really harden your heart in a lot of ways. And to go through what I did with the divorce and everything, I went through a big paradigm shift. I went through a real attitude shift and a real, take your thought captive, right? Take every thought captive for the cause of Christ. And I really, really live that every single day now. I'm not saying I'm perfect because that is not going to happen, but how
do you do that? How do you take the thoughts captive?
Well, I think that's the key right there, that everything starts here. And that's where the battle is too. That's where the war is, where the spiritual war is. It's for your mind. And so anytime a negative thought comes in, yeah, I can get on a loop. I can get on a hamster wheel with that thought and zip just as fast as anybody. What I learned to do was, circumstance comes, right? And maybe in the moment you can't deal with it, because you got to do this, that, and the other thing. You don't have time to fall apart right then. What I did over the years of processing everything was I would mark the calendar. I would look and I'd be like, okay, Saturday the 15th, I don't have anything else planned. It's blocked off. That day is mine. And I would do all kinds of stuff. I would lock myself in my bedroom. I wouldn't get out of bed. I would cry until I threw up. I would make artwork. I would drink too much alcohol. I would, whatever it was. But what I did was I deliberately put myself in a state of lament. And if you study Lamentations, if you study that from a biblical perspective, it's a very necessary process of grieving. It's not that you can say, that's so horrible, I never want to think about it again. That's just stuffing it, right? The only way to the end of something is right through the middle. You can't go around it. You can't go under it. You can't avoid it. And so I set time aside to go right through the middle. And it was
Wow, that's
so
brave.
painful, so painful, where I would just get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I would get so sick of crying that had to get sort of like mad about it. Like, I'm not going to cry anymore. This is done. I felt it. But I really had to allow myself, to really sit there in that ugliness and really feel it all the way to the end until it would die down.
Wow, that is so important and so profound, because we don't do that in our society anymore, right? We pretend it doesn't exist because, people ask you how you are and you're like, if you tell them, they're going to run away.
Oh, they do.
And, so we don't authentically feel our pain. And in trying to disconnect from our pain, I feel like we disconnect from ourselves. And when we disconnect from ourselves, of course, we're disconnected from God. And that just becomes isolation and extreme pain.
Extreme pain. You said a very magic word, and that is authentically. And that is what that brought me to, was authenticity. I realized that I have basically lived my entire life being who everyone around me needed to be. And what that made me do was to deny who I was, who God created me to be. And the fact that I did that to myself, I was the biggest cause of my own pain in my life. And I had to go through that process to understand I was the cause of my pain by not being authentic. And so it's just been probably in recent history, probably like the last 3 years or so, that I really got to that authenticity and started living authentically who I am, without apology and without explanation. It's just, I'm not being gratuitous about it. I'm just being me. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You don't have to change. You can decide you don't want to be in my life. When I shifted and became authentic, it was a weird magic that happened in my life. My whole friend group fell off the face of the earth.
Wow.
And so I was like, this is terrifying. I thought that I had a system around me. I thought I had a community around me. But they weren't friends with me because I wasn't me. And when I presented me, they weren't my friends. And so it was like, it's like they went like this. And I was like, wait, where are you going? Well, I'm authentic. Come back. And what I realized was those weren't my people. And now I'm authentically myself. And now my circle is so peaceful and much smaller. And I just feel so whole, not perfect and not totally happy all the time, just peaceful because I'm really me. I am me. I don't explain myself and I don't apologize anymore. I used to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No, none of that for me anymore. Now, I apologize when I have wronged someone and I realize that and I accept that and I try to change my ways, but I don't mean it like I never apologize. I just
Right.
don't apologize for being myself anymore. And the way that I show up, it's amazing to me because the reaction of people around me, since I'm in a new city, I meet new people all the time, right? And I'm really living this authentic life now. And the people I have met, I feel like a magnet now because people they just gravitate towards me naturally. I'm not doing anything special. I'm not even maybe smiling. Maybe I got my resting bitch face on, if I'm allowed to say that. But I used to be like, you gotta have a smile, you gotta present, you gotta be, oh, you gotta be this, you gotta be that, you have to be. Now I just show up and I am who I am, and people are so easy around me, and the friendships that I make are so easy to maintain because I don't have to present anything. If I'm having a bad day, I'm having a bad day. If I'm having a good day, I try to cheer people up. It's it's just such a different way for me to exist that I'm still getting used to it. And I do sometimes catch myself like, oh, or I see someone doing the people pleasing dance and it makes me feel uncomfortable now. I used to expect everyone, well, I'm people pleasing, so why aren't you people pleasing? I used to get frustrated with people like, why are you people pleasing back to me? And I couldn't understand, why they weren't doing it. But now I'm sure I'm frustrating the people pleasers because I'm there. I'm at peace with myself. And the world is so beautiful. It's like someone took off a filter and it was all gray before. And now, like, even on the cloudy days, for me, the sun is shining.
I love this. I love this. When we first met, we were both seeing a lot of gray.
Mm-hmm. You sure were. I
Yeah.
remember that very much.
Yeah. I love this. And it's just so reflective of who you are as I see your beautiful artwork in the background, that how ironic it is that you created these beautiful pieces out of your pain, out of your insomnia, and they're all in color. They're right. It's crayons. It's color.
The color. Yeah.
And now you're talking about seeing in color, because you're able to be your authentic self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It's been a wild journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. If you could go back to when we met, when we were both seeing in gray. And gosh, I'm never going to forget that night when we were sharing and crying, I think, together about some things. What would you say to her now or to me back then? Because your perspective is different. What would you say to your former self?
I I would say so much, but I think sort of the sum total of everything is you were made for such a time as this. It doesn't matter what you think your circumstances are. You were made for this, and it's okay. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. I'm getting a picture and thinking right now about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they prayed to be delivered from the fiery furnace. And of course, it was out of their obedience that the evil king didn't like that he decided to throw them into the fire. And obviously, they were asking to be delivered and not go into the fire. But what happened when they went into the fire is the fire burned off their ropes, their shackles, and they walked freely in the fire with Jesus and did not get burned.
Mm-hmm.
And even the guards got singed when they were throwing them into the fire. So it's not that the fire wasn't hot, it's that they were protected. And Jesus walked in the fiery furnace with them.
Yep.
And that's exactly what you're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get to avoid the furnace.
No.
And a lot of us think that God doesn't answer our prayers because we don't get delivered from the furnace.
Right.
But he does answer our prayers because he walks in the furnace with us.
Right.
And here you are.
Yeah. That's a very good analogy. I hadn't thought about that particular story, but it's very true. You know, how is gold or other precious metals forged? It's in fire.
Mm-hmm. Your crayons, your artwork.
My crayons. Yeah, that's how I do it. I melt them, right? That is very, very true. Circumstance. I learned what circumstance was. Before I used to move with circumstance. You know, that dictated to me who I was and how I felt. And now circumstance means nothing to me. I have a joy inside of me that cannot be quenched by circumstance. And it doesn't come from me. I did not make that up myself. I didn't tell myself that I'm joyful. No, I literally begged God for peace. And the only way for me to feel that he wanted my heart is what he wanted. You know, I was so, because of the anger I harbored, I was very rebellious against God. And I had to go through that furnace to burn off my own shackles. And it really, really put my life in perspective. And I dare say that it helps people around me, because a lot of times I can empathize with people so deeply. People will come up to me, strangers will come up to me, and they will tell me like the most personal things. And I don't know why they're telling me this, because I'm like, I have no idea why you're telling me this. It's like, seems like the most personal thing, but I don't know, a peace comes over me and I'm able to relate to them on some level, just the level of pain or the level of frustration or the loneliness or hopelessness that they feel. And they ask me, how did you get through it? And I'm able to tell them, I didn't do anything. I turned toward God. God did it. I showed up. He did the rest.
Yep.
And that's the truth. I'm not making it up. All I did was show up.
Yep.
He did the rest.
Yep. That's what he promises. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to encourage people who need an altered moment to ask God for eyes to see and ears to hear where he's working in their lives. And that's a conversation he always promises to answer exactly the same way he did with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I love this.
I want to say that there was a point in my life where I was really struggling with God and, you know, really quite angry at a lot of things. And I wasn't even 100% sure that God was there, but I started to cry out to the God who would listen.
Mm.
And because I just felt so detached from God that I was like, whoever you are, I'm praying to the God who will listen, the God who will answer. And there's only one God that can do that. And so that's who answered, and that's who showed up for me.
That's amazing. Well, we are close to the end of our time, unfortunately. I have 1,000 more questions for you. We might have to have you come back.
Okay.
um, do you have any final thoughts before we break for today?
I would just encourage people to, first of all, keep control of this. Those thoughts that come in, those things that you get on that hamster wheel about, really get in there and say, no, I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to get on that hamster wheel.
Such a good word.
But also just really trust where you are in your process. Everything is a process. It's not 0 to 60. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It can be slow and tedious. Trust where you're at in your process and stay committed to it. You know, somewhere inside of you, you know what the truth is. You were blessed with an intuition. Trust it. Trust it. And stop betraying yourself. Because as soon as you stop betraying yourself, no one else can betray you ever again.
Wow.
So that's what I would like to say to people.
That's such a good word. And gosh, it's hard to end these sometimes.
Yeah.
Because there are so many more, like I said, there's so many more questions that I want to ask you. For the sake of time, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. You are a hot mama, beautiful inside and out. I am so proud of you and jealous that Cleveland has you, and excited that you're happy. And wow. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who joined us today and who is listening again on the replay. And we will be back next Friday. I'll be out of town on Tuesday. So we will be back next Friday at this same time, 4:30 Eastern. We will see you then. Laura, thank you again.
So love
everybody.
You.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.